Story 1. My ex-wife still keeps trying to get back together with me and our daughters want that to happen too. Me 36M, ex-wife 36F, my daughters 16F. The above issue doesn't really sound like a big problem, right? Yeah, well, while I wish I could just plain tell her to piss off and never bother me again, there is the matter of us having 2 daughters and sharing custody. So I can't excise her from my life on a permanent basis. Not without removing our daughters too. We married fairly early in our lives, back when we were 20, and we had been dating for 3 years before that. Our daughters were born in the very first year of the marriage, and there were some complications which meant my ex-wife would have difficulty conceiving again. Didn't matter to me at the time, because I was just glad she made it healthy and fine through the whole ordeal and that we already had 2 beautiful baby girls to love and raise up. The marriage lasted for 9 years. Ended when I divorced her for cheating. I have absolutely no tolerance for it, and I don't believe in forcing myself to suffer needlessly for shit that wasn't my fault to begin with. While this might sound incredulous to some folks, any love I had for my ex-wife was pretty much killed when I found out about her cheating and the details behind it. So yeah, this isn't a threat about me moving on from her. I've done that 7 years ago. Hell, I don't even hate her. I just don't give a damn about what goes on in her life unless it concerns our daughters. The problem is that it's only me that moved on from the whole thing. The ex-wife, her family, and even our daughters, have kept trying to get us back together even though I have made it plain for everyone that I have no interest of ever doing that. Me not dating at first for a few years after the divorce might have been giving them false hope, but I sure that I wasn't going to jump into another relationship so soon after. Not with our daughters to look after. They were my #1 priority, besides my own issues which stemmed from the ex's cheating. Those issues, by the by, got resolved with the help of friends, family, and some counseling. So yeah, that's over and done with. I have no issue in communicating with our girls. None whatsoever. There's never been any fighting, no yelling, no nonsensical teenage rebellion, no tantrums thrown, and so on. Pretty great, right? Except this whole thing. They know about her cheating on me, and it was their mother in fact who told them about it, some 3 years ago or so. I imagine she's been feeding them some kind of bullshit since then, and I've asked her countless times to stop with it, that it wasn't helping anyone, that it only prevented them from moving on. But the ex-wife didn't stop, she apparently just got subtler about it. In all the years since we divorced, she hasn't dated or slept with anyone else. While I suppose she thinks that admirable, I don't. To be honest, I find it kind of insulting. When we were married, she slept with someone else, but now she's just fine going without sex for 7 years. Whatever. Not that it matters. While I could ignore the occasional mentions of their mother, of how well she looks, of them showing me photos they took with her, obviously all dolled up for my sake, it's gotten worse lately. Why? Because I have a girlfriend. Clemence is not the first since the divorce, but she is the most serious relationship I had since my marriage ended. She also happens to be 8 years my junior. Before getting together as a couple, we knew each other for 4 years through a shared hobby. So basically it was a gradual transition from being friends to being involved with each other. I can honestly say I love this woman. It was a surprise to me when I realized that, because while I didn't really want to admit it to myself, I was afraid for a time that what my ex-wife did to me damaged me on some fundamental level and rendered me incapable of ever truly loving someone else, like I once did her. Initially, my daughters had very little to say about our relationship, much like they didn't comment anything on the previous 2 I had post-divorce. But then they started coming home, ahead of the schedule we set up in advance, and they'd find me and Clemence together, nothing compromising, not sex or anything of the sort. Then came the grumbling. Then came the "why is she here?" question. Then came, "it's not fair to mom what you're doing," as if I was actually doing this solely to spite or hurt their mother. So I sat them down and talked. And I talked, but they're just not getting it. They simply won't give up on this preposterous fantasy of theirs where I get back with their mother. Clemence, thank God, has been understanding and isn't upset by their behavior. She's basically saying to give them time, but I kind of doubt that will work. It hasn't so far, so I have no idea why more time would change anything. Anyway, since I'm really all out of ideas, I figured I might as well ask you folks here if any one of you might have an idea how to handle this. Is there even a way, an approach of any sort, that could work on my daughters realizing I will not, under any circumstances, get back with their mother? Update. 1 year later. It's been a while since I was first here, and I was reminded recently that I owed an update to the kind and good people here who helped me with our troubles. A lot of things has happened. Among those things, my daughters actually stumbled across my post. I had no idea they even browsed Reddit, let alone this place. When I came home one day from work, I found them crying. They pretty much jumped me, hugged me, wouldn't let me go, and begged me to forgive them. Sadly, they had read one of my replies and found out the dreadful extent of my ex-wife's affair and how much it had devastated me. It took us a while, but we got through it, as a family. There was nothing for me to forgive. They're still young and they love their mother, who took that love and used it to manipulate them. That's on her, not them. There was some much-needed counseling, but after several months, the woman who was helping us heal and move on has said that nothing more needed to be done, and they should only check in with her once in a while, rather than continue their weekly sessions. We're closer than we were before, but their relationship with their mother has suffered for it, which I think is completely understandable, but I still caution them about lingering too much on what she did, since I had gotten over what she did all those years ago. That was something also resolved in counseling, both their own and our shared ones, so it's all behind us now. I had a brief confrontation with my ex-wife about it and made it clear that she was to not talk about this getting back together nonsense anymore with our daughters. I can't tell if it really got through to her, but my daughters have not been pestered about me since then. Or they simply ignore their mother and don't bring it up at home. Either way, so long as my daughters are doing fine, I could care less about what my ex-wife is doing. Since the situation had improved, things had also become much better between my daughters and my girlfriend, so much that they actually started talking with her, rather than just exchange terse greetings and goodbyes. Even occasionally asking for tips on something girly stuff, and I can't tell you how much it warmed my heart to see it happening for the first time. I'll admit that also helped me push my thoughts in the direction of proposing to my girlfriend, who had been incredibly supporting and understanding through all of this. We had known each other for a long time now, spent so much time as a couple, and after all this mess, I didn't really think there was anything more I could to express my love for her. However, I was beaten to the punch. 2 months ago, Clemens, together with my daughters, surprised me one day and proposed to me. I have to say that I felt very odd, but also very happy. Not just the proposal, but that my daughters had actually worked with my girlfriend on surprising me that day with dinner and a night out. To put it simply, I was blown away. It was a small and private ceremony, with only our closest friends and family attending. Currently, we're also expecting, and my daughters are looking forward to having a baby brother or sister to spoil. Story 2. My aunt stole my inheritance. Then karma struck, and her life fell apart. My aunt was one of 2 kids my grandparents had. My mother was the polar opposite of my aunt. She worked from the age of 12 in my grandfather's shop, never asked for anything, and eventually managed to start her own business. My aunt never held down a job till the age of 26, was constantly stealing from her parents, and was constantly in trouble. Despite this, my aunt was spoiled by my grandmother, and so were her kids. She had 3 kids from 3 different men, and her first husband was not one of them, if you know what I mean. Didn't matter what my aunt or her kids did, my grandmother would always jump to their defense. She never had time for my mom and her kids, unless it was to get something from us. The only reason my mom would visit her was because she loved my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in 2004, and a few months after my nan decided to write up a new will. My mother and my aunt were both present for it when she signed it, so they knew what was in it. It made it so that when she passed away, her home would be sold and the money split 25% each to my mom and aunt, and the remaining 50% would go evenly to the grandkids. At the time, the home was worth more than £500,000, so it would be a nice little inheritance, but nothing life-changing. In 2010, my mom died after an accident and did not have a current will in place. As she no longer had her business and was renting a house, she didn't have anything of much monetary value. The only thing she was concerned about was what would be done at her funeral should she have passed away, but had told me everything she wanted. The music, the flowers, the coffin color, and even what people were to wear at the funeral. She wanted people to wear bright warm colors. So when she passed, my aunt and nan took over all the arrangements and tried to undo all the things I'd told them. The songs were going to be songs I knew Mum didn't like, the flowers were all the wrong colors, and they picked a hideous coffin. With the help of my siblings, we were able to change a few of the things back to what they were supposed to be, but the coffin couldn't be changed for some reason, and my nan refused to let people come dressed as clowns, so it was all black. It was frustrating. After the funeral, my nan had her will changed. My siblings and I were told by our aunt that she didn't have any involvement with the writing of the will, and our nan told us that she changed it so that Mum's share would go to her kids instead. All good, we thought. After Mum passed away, my nan just stopped talking about my mum. At first, we thought it was because she was still recovering from losing her daughter, but even 5 years after Mum passed, she still wouldn't talk about her. Even if you brought up a story about Mum, Nan would very obviously try and change the subject, usually about how hard my aunt and her shitty kids had it. And if you went to talk to her about your own problems, she would somehow bring it back to my aunt. In 2016, my nan passed away. She had written down what she wanted to be done for her funeral, and it was basically all the same things she had picked out for my mum's funeral, even the music to be played. I don't know why she tried to have a dress rehearsal funeral using my mum as the stand-in, but it was obvious that's what she was trying to do. So after a couple of months, our siblings and I were waiting to hear about the will reading, and my aunt kept telling me, "Oh, it'll be another month before we can do the reading." I didn't mind. I wasn't fussed about the money, to be honest. But my oldest brother was hoping to use the money to pay for a honeymoon for him and his then-fiancée, and my younger brother was about to start uni, so it would be a hell of a help. Eventually, my dad bumped into the solicitor my grandmother had used to deal with her will and asked what was happening. The solicitor let slip that the will had already been read and that it left everything to my aunt. When my dad questioned this, the solicitor told him that my aunt had been present when the will was written, despite promising that she had nothing to do with it. When confronted, my aunt initially tried to deny but eventually admitted to lying to all of us. She showed us the will, and it confirmed what we already knew. The house and all its contents were now my aunt's. This included my granddad's war medals. He fought in the Second World War. When I told her that he had promised them to me before he died, she said, "Well, unless you have it in writing, you will have nothing in this house." Anyway, I already gave them to Clive. My heart sank. Clive was her eldest son, and the dictionary definition of a fuck-up. He'd been in and out of prison for stealing and dealing drugs. I knew that the moment that Prick had got his hands on my granddad's medals, they would have been sold off. We looked into taking her to court over the will, but everyone we spoke to said that we probably wouldn't get anything out of it. She immediately put the house up for sale at close to £750,000. She had pissed off too many people in our town, so she was gonna sell the house and move closer to her daughter, who lives in a big city. An offer was made on the house, and she put down a deposit on a house near the big city. And I thought that was that. Here's where karma comes into play. The people who wanted my nan's house had a survey done on the house to see if there were issues. And oh boy was there. Turns out that the land the house was built on was way too soft for the type of house it was, and it was sinking. It has sunk about 2 centimeters in the 40-plus years my nan and granddad had lived there, but the sinking was accelerating to 1 centimeter per year. This meant that within the next 3 years, the house would need some serious work, or be knocked down. The new value of the house dropped to £60,000. The buyers immediately pulled out, having not even put down a deposit. She couldn't buy her new house, but still had to pay the deposit on it. And while this was happening, she let Clive move in with her into the house that she rented from the council. He wasn't allowed to live in any of the council houses because he had trashed every single one he'd ever been given. Someone reported this, and she was kicked out of her home. She was forced to move into my nan's old home as she couldn't live anywhere else. So there she is, living in a crumbling house with her shithead son and her partner. She was stuck there for 2 years. Every time I saw her, she would try and start talking to me, and I would just ignore her and walk off. One time as I was walking away, she screamed, "Your mother deserved to die for having a retard like you." In the middle of a busy street. Someone reported her to the police, and she had an official warning from them and was ridiculed on Facebook. Every time I saw her after that, she looked more and more miserable. Eventually, she sold the house for something like £85,000 and moved in with her daughter in the big city. I lost contact with her and her kids after this. I thought karma had been issued. Oh, but karma still wasn't done with her. I bumped into one of her former friends, and she told me what happened after she left our town. She moved into her daughter's home, let's call her Sue, but they only had a 3-bedroom house and 3 kids. My aunt and her partner had to live in the smallest room in the house while my aunt looked for a job and a home to rent. Even with £85,000, she couldn't afford a home anywhere. After about a month, my aunt's partner ran off after emptying her account. She was left stranded in Sue's house, not contributing anything because all the money she makes goes into bingo. Eventually, Sue and my aunt got into a screaming match and my aunt said something along the lines of, "I should have aborted you." Sue immediately kicked her out of her house. So, again, there's my aunt, in a city where she knows nobody, no money, no home, and the last bridge she had a smoldering wreck. The last anyone had heard, she was living in a caravan in the roughest part of the city, and she could no longer work because she was suffering from early onset arthritis and could no longer move her hands. I know I shouldn't get joy out of something like this happening to another person, but it does bring me some peace as to what happened. Update. 1 year 3 months later. Hello all. Around a year ago, I told all of you about my aunt stealing my and my siblings' inheritance, and I thought I'd make a quick update. But I wanted to answer and correct a few things. 1. I have tried to find my grandfather's war medals, but because I do not have his service number or his death certificate, I can't even get access to his records. After I found out my cousin had taken and sold the medals, I did search local stores and Facebook groups looking for info, but no luck. I know he hadn't won any major medals. He was a mechanic and driver in the Royal Army, so thankfully had a rather uneventful war, so it would have just been the campaign and service medals. 2. Someone did ask for specifics about the signing of the will, pointing out that my aunt couldn't have been a witness to the signing of the will due to laws preventing it. I don't know the full specifics of what she and my nan had done, but her solicitor did let slip that my aunt had known what was in the will before it was written. I just don't know the full details. I'm ignorant when it comes to solicitors and the such, and it was my eldest sister who read the will in full and relayed it to the rest of us. We did ask if there was anything we could fight it, but everyone we talked to said there wasn't any case. Sorry if that was confusing. 3. I have seen a few comments on Reddit and on YouTube videos using she/her to describe me. Well, I guess that's why now people on here give their age and gender at the start of these stories, because I'm a man. 32/M in case you were wondering. I wasn't annoyed or upset about it, I just thought it was funny. 4. Someone asked what a caravan is. They're what we call travel trailers in the UK. Think of a fiberglass or aluminium box on wheels. People in the UK use them for short holidays, and they are not fun to live in for an extended period of time. I have experience of this, and it sucked. Anyway, on to the update. So when I last left off, my aunt had been left abandoned in a big city and stuck in a caravan with crippling arthritis. Well, a few weeks after my first post I had gotten news that she has somehow found a new BF. How I don't know, because my aunt had the look and build of an obese pug, and that was when she was in her 30s. So what she looks like now in her mid-60s doesn't bear thinking about. Well, she and her new boy toy, I think I just threw up a little, decided to move to a seaside town and start a new life. Well, you can guess what happened. Boy toy must have gotten sick of her, or found out she had no money, so abandoned her. During an argument with her landlord, she suffered a heart attack. And while in hospital, she suffered another. She has recovered but is even more disabled than she was before. She's been given a home by her local council. But it's okay, guys, because Clive has come to live with her. Oh my god, Clive. The fuck up who sold my grandfather's medals and lost my aunt her home. The man is a walking episode of Jeremy Kyle. For those outside the UK, Jeremy Kyle was a tabloid TV show similar to Jerry Springer in the US. After my aunt left my hometown, things started to look up for Clive. Someone took pity on him and gave him a job as a laborer, and for a few months, he was doing well. Looking clean and well, despite everything that had happened. I was glad he was getting his life back on track. Well, it turns out not. He was given a work van to go from job to job, and one day came to work with a black eye and no van. He told everyone that he'd been carjacked and the van stolen. Sadly, for Clive, they found the van. And a very confused man wondering why the police were arresting him. After questioning and a text exchange, they found out that Clive had sold the van to the man and gave himself a black eye to make it look like a theft. Clive was arrested. He was massively lucky because his boss didn't press charges. The boss told me later that he only did it out of respect for my grandfather, and all the police did was fine for wasting police time. After burning through all the money he had, he was again homeless. His only lifeline was his younger brother, let's call him Colin. Colin was in the armed forces and a pretty high rank from what I've heard. Colin was away from home most of the time on deployment but had managed to buy a nice home in our town. He let Clive live in his house on the agreement that he pays part of the mortgage. You know where this is going. He stopped paying, stopped maintaining the house, and treated it like a drugs den. Colin asked him to leave, but Clive used squatter rights to prevent removal. Because Colin was overseas, he couldn't come back and sort it out and kick him out in person and had no one in the area to wait for Clive to leave and change the locks behind him. So Clive lived in the house for 6 months. That was until a pissed-off father broke in and beat the shit out of Clive. You see, the father had found out that Clive, who is 41 by the way, had been sexting and selling weed to a 13-year-old girl. After that, Clive abandoned the house and ran off to Mummy. From what I've heard, Colin had stripped the house and is selling it to move closer to his base. We found most of this out from my aunt's daughter Sue, the one who kicked my aunt out. You see, my brother was on holiday in Turkey and just so happened to be in the hotel room next to Sue. She was very apologetic to my brother and thought we might like to know what had happened. She seems to have a nice life and family and no longer lives in the house she shared with her mum. I am generally happy for her. Although, I don't think I will try to mend our relationship. Sue had said some spiteful things to me in particular and had never reached out to apologize. I might still feel a little bit bitter for that. As for my aunt, I don't know how to feel. I do hope she gets better and grows enough of a spine to kick Clive out, as it will only lead her to more trouble. In some ways, I do wish I could rebuild a relationship with her. She is the last living link to my grandfather and grandmother, as well as my mother's only living sibling. But I know I could never trust her, never not see that face and the spitefulness that she had for me and my family. She chose money, or what she thought was money, over us, and I don't think I can forgive that. But I'm not going to go out of my way to do her more harm. I'm just happy that I am in a better place now. Story 3. Would I be the a-hole if I break up with my boyfriend when this year marks the 10th anniversary of the death of his wife? There's too much to say, but I'll try to make it short. I'm using the Google Traductor for most of the things, sorry. In short, I, 34F, have been dating Leon, 42M, for 2 years. My uncle became friends with Leon when they started working together and he started coming to family gatherings and birthdays. Leon is a great guy and we get along instantly. My family always talk to me about Leon saying he's a great guy. One day Leon asked me out on a date and I said yes, we started dating. Leon has 2 children, 14M and 12M, his wife died in an accident 9 years ago. Here comes the problem, Leon always talks about his wife. I know it sounds ugly to complain about it but I don't say it with jealously, I mean it uncomfortably. He mentions her in intimate moments of our time, such as when we finish having intimacy or when we're having a date. Sometimes he just starts telling me random anecdotes about his wife and I just stay there feeling like if I'm sleeping with a married man and I'm the side piece. I don't ask for much, just to have a date where it's just me and him, a date where I don't feel like someone's lover with a man who talks about the things we like. He goes to the psychologist so according to him he's working better on his grief, but I doubt it very much. I'm not the first girlfriend he had after his wife passed away. He still has contact with his wife's family, which is obvious, they are the grandparents of his children, and I have met them in person only one time because all they did was tell me how much Leon and his wife loved each other and treat me really bad. I remember that they put a video with photos of Leon and his wife when they married, while I was like just standing and looking because they didn't even give me a chair to sit. I think in their minds is cute to me to see my boyfriend with his wife. I don't know, it's not cute, it's weird. He always says in front of me that she was the love of his life. I find it cute, but when I think about the future I'm just like, I really want to get old with a man who is making it clear that he will never love me? Is that the kind of love I want? I want to be the only one for my future husband. One time I took him to my favorite place and he just said, "It's beautiful, I wish wife was here so we could show her this." It's like being a third wheel in my own relationship. I can tell a lot of situations like these, a lot. We talked about this, most of the times he just says that he does that without thinking but then he seems to forget about it and goes back to his usual behavior and I'm tired. The only one time I talked about this with my family I was only told that a real woman wouldn't be jealous of a dead woman and would be happy to be with a man who has loved another woman like that and expect him to love me almost the same. That I shouldn't expect him to love me in the same way since all love is different and that I should just be empathetic and supportive of him. I listened to them but nothing got better. I've been feeling so much pressure to go through with this that I can't take it anymore. Anyways, I stopped listening to my family and finally talked with my friend who's a psychologist and told me that his behavior is not healthy for anyone and that I should think for myself. She texted, "Good for him for loving his wife so much, but you don't deserve to be used as an emotional support doll," and she's right. I have decided to cut off the relationship but this year marks 10 years since the death of his wife, not only his family, even my family is helping them to host a family reunion in honor of her with the things she likes. I think it's a nice thing to do, but I'm totally ready to end the relationship but I'm afraid I'm the bad guy in the story. The 10th anniversary is in July, I want to end the relationship now but I fear that I will be a POS if I do that in this year when he is so vulnerable and even my family is pushing me to act like if I was his wife's best friend. He even says that his wife and I would be good friends if we had meet. Why would you want your wife to be best friends with the woman you're sleeping with right now? It's too weird. I think I'm insane because everyone around me sees it as something cute. In short, I don't know if I should break up with him right now or wait until I don't know, next year. Would I be a POS if I break up with him now? Update. 3 days later. A few people who lived the same situation messaged me and that really helped me to feel understood. I finally talked with all my friends about everything he did. I always avoided doing that because I knew they were going to tell me that I should leave him but I just ended up being trapped by everyone else's words. We didn't love each other and that's obvious even if he says doesn't think so. Yes, I actually posted to get approval. I don't know how bad is that but I needed to know that I was doing things right and that I'm not crazy before I said the truth to my friends. The next day I finally talked to Leon. I really needed to break up at that point. He came to see me at my house and I told him we needed to talk. I went straight to the point saying I want to end the relationship and he instantly asked me what he did wrong. We literally had this talk before and he does know what things makes me feel uncomfortable. I was tired so I just proceeded to list everything he did. How he never defended me from his ex's in-law, how he never made an effort to stop naming his wife all the time even though I told him 1,000 times that it made me uncomfortable, how does he make me feel like I'm the third in my own relationship, etc. He apologized saying the same as always, that he doesn't realize it when he does that. We've had this discussion before many times, but this time I told him I want to break up. I also told him that I don't think his therapist is helping, but Leon just said that he is helping him and feels mentally well. Leon told me that we could start going together with his therapist because he knows that it can be hard for a woman to be with a widower. Jealousy is a normal thing in this kind of cases, and that really triggered me. I've let both his and my family make me believe that I'm a crazy jealous. I've let even blogs about widower couples fill my head with things like, you just have to be empathetic. Don't expect him to love you, he's always going to love his first wife more, so just get used to it and be a good woman. I've let myself be trampled on just because everyone told me that getting over a loss is difficult and I have to be empathetic and think about the other. I'm so damn tired of it. I'm tired of being empathetic. I've been dragging this thought for months and in that moment I just burst out. We yelled at each other. We said a lot of things to each other, but at the end of it all he went on with his mentality that I'm wrong and I'm just jealous. He said that I clearly don't feel ready to date a widower and I ended up being like his ex. I told him that he's a fucking hypocrite. That he filled his mouth talking shits about his ex-girlfriend, but now I'm sure that he treated her like he treated me. He probably took a submissive woman to fulfill the void and took us as sex dolls. None of that echoed in his mind because he left my house saying I'm just jealous of a ghost and I disappointed him. I'm fed up. I'm so angry while I write this. As soon as he left the house I sended my mother a message saying that I'm not going to live the same life of my SIL, living in the shadow of a woman who's no longer in this world and they should have empathy for me and not for a man who's not even their family. I told her that I'm tired of being pressured and I don't care if I die single. I'm sure they don't care about how I feel. In the end they will keep saying that I have a cold heart like always, but I want to not care about that anymore. My friends are staying at my house to keep me company and I can finally get all the accumulated shit out of my brain with them. I don't feel good being second and I know I'll always be second. I don't want to replace the place of the first wife and I know that even if I wanted to, I never will. I know a lot if people feels good with that kind of relationship but not me. Maybe I'm really cold-hearted, but I'm surely not that empathetic. If his wife were alive, he would clearly never choose me, he wouldn't even look at me. I don't like that kind of love and I really had a hard time accepting that I don't want that kind of love for myself. I feel that I am still young and I can wait for a man to have me as the first choice in his heart. I hope Leon can overcome his traumas and be happy, but not with me. Someone messaged me that I don't deserve his love, but what love are we talking about? I'm just a sex doll at this point. For now he's not going to change and doesn't want to change, but that's not my business. I'm not a bedroom therapist anymore. I'd rather be single forever than falling again in that. I want to start more therapy and Pilates. I'm still obviously affected by all of this and nothing really changed. Nothing would change that fast, but I'm just happy that I'm free now. For now I just wanted to vent. So sorry if everything sounds too aggressive.